For over 30 years, we've had the privilege to live and work in this great community. Kerrigan, Estes, Rankin, McLeod, and Thompson, representing accident victims across Northwest Florida.
And now, from Pensacola, Florida, it's Within Reason with Bob Kerrigan and Bill Rankin.
Good evening and welcome to Within Reason. Bob Kerrigan and Mr.
Bill Rankin.
Bill Rankin. And we have lots of interesting things to talk about.
Every week.
We do.
Stuff comes out.
Yeah. People are calling us.
They do.
Yeah, they tell us interesting things. Did you know this? Did you know that?
Yeah.
The fat cats are taking the money again.
Plus
I mean,
plus just
like they always do.
Stuff in the news. I mean, I don't know exactly when this came. It's actually been a while. I think the opinion came down May 31st. The League of Women Voters versus Browning, and all you got to do there is read the opinion, which anybody can, and it turns out, this is my opinion, and I think it's Judge Henkel's opinion too, that what the Republicans did with respect to suppressing the people who gathered signatures and gathered voter registrations is just abhorrent.
Yes.
It's just repellent. I mean, obviously they just decided, the League of Women Voters and Rock the Vote, which sounds tacky to me, and some other organization, they were signing up people that the Republicans didn't like because they weren't going to vote Republican. So they just decided they would shut them down with some unconstitutional stuff.
This is poor leadership.
It's dramatic. It's
Would they make it a felony, Bill, if you turned in them thing late or something?
Well, here's what they did. Yeah. This is all in Judge Henkel's opinion. If you got an appetite for this, I do, but I have a kind of a dull life. League of Women Voters versus Browning. It's 27 pages, but it's double spaced. It's not that hard to read. So here's one of the things you did. You may have heard that they gave people like the League of Women Voters 48 hours on the dot. So Judge Henkel says, well, if you collect a signature at 8:03 Saturday morning, they're not open all weekend, so you'd have to turn it in before 8:03 on Monday morning, or you're going to be fined and punished and stuff. And right. I think that was widely known. But anybody who helped in this voter registration effort, and that includes people who are not signing people up, but they're just soliciting for the drive. For example, apparently, when some of these outfits have booths somewhere, or little desks where you can sign up and register to vote, they'd have people out there passing out flyers, go over here, and they would be doing nothing but passing out flyers. But they were identified and defined as the people who were covered by this act. So not only did they had their names had to be turned in, and if they quit, you'd have to turn in their names 10 days after, which is interesting for a volunteer who you never know when they're coming and going. The volunteers don't know. But each of these people had to sign something that they knew what the law was, and the form that they produced was wrong. It was just wrong. It violated the law. It suggested that if you turned in anything that was fraudulent, in other words, a voter came by and lied about their address.
Right.
How would you know that? And you turn that in, you go to jail for 5 years. So you want each volunteer, you know, some do-gooder, League of Women Voters,
to know the law. Right.
Yeah, it's okay for them to know the law, but you're giving them this false idea about the law to try to scare them into not doing it.
Yes.
Which is the implication of that. It's just disgusting.
Bill, here's what I don't understand, and I think you've been very objective about that, because this is an embarrassment to anybody. If the Democrats did it, it'd be just as big an embarrassment. And that Acorn outfit did some terrible things, just terrible things. So, I mean, you know, we call it like it is. Yeah. But
and
then
what's even worse about that, the national government used to give Acorn. Now, if the Voting Rights Act says you can have an organization that goes out and helps people register to vote and gathers signatures and fills out the forms and sends them in. You want to do that, fine. But the national government gave Acorn money to do that. Why would you do that?
I was trying to be very gracious, but you just piled it on, didn't you? I just tried to make a little casual comment that said that Acorn was bad, but oh no, that's all you needed.
It's even worse.
Well, I would like to make a couple of more points.
Acorn was bad.
I understand. A couple of more points.
Oh, go ahead.
This is no credit.
I'll try to shut up.
No, this is no.
I'll let you talk. No, just go right ahead.
The Republican Party shortening the voting hours and days. Give me.
I can't argue about this.
As that
What's
moron
the point
John
of that?
Stossel used to say. By the way, speaking of John Stossel, you know, he's just an awful person, in my opinion, okay? He's always...
I thought we were just going to do policy, and we were congratulating ourselves on not doing ad hominem attacks.
Okay, well-
We got criticized for personally attacking people, and we said, no, we don't do that. We don't say this person cheats on their spouse or doesn't brush their teeth.
No.
We're just talking about policy.
Okay, well, on Stossel, I'm glad he's at Fox, because he did not belong anywhere with objective news, because he decided how he was going to write the story, then he went out and proved it. And he did it. He hammered the trial lawyers. He hammered anybody and was always, give me a break. And we'll give you a break, John, okay? The break you got is you headed to Fox where you belong on John Stossel.
Well,
but back to the voting hours, okay? The entire brunt of this was on working people. People who have a hard time getting to the voting booth, who want to vote, who love this country and cherish the right to vote. The Republicans said, oh, no.
They were voting wrong.
Well, you're voting wrong.
What gives a right to vote if you vote wrong?
We're cutting the hours because we certainly don't want just anybody to show up and vote, even though you're registered. Now, you add to that this purging thing. There's an article, there's an editorial in the morning paper. The response by some of the saying it was just wrong, motivated wrong. And here we have a wonderful supervisor of elections. I mean, a guy who's just done a terrific job. And many of these other counties.
I think they do. They want to be efficient, and they don't want people waiting in long lines. And they're going to send out the information to tell you which districts you're in. I think Mr. Stafford does a good job.
He does a terrific job. And he's quite capable of finding out if people aren't qualified. Do you think that any Republican who finds out that a dead Democrat voted in the last election would go screw through the roof? They'd find him, they'd prosecute him, put him in prison. But what comes down from on high is this list that you should show cause why your name shouldn't be stricken from the voting records. What, they have 500 people so far wrote in, so what are you doing?
Yeah,
I'm a registered voter. I live in this country. I've served in war, and you're telling me I'm not on the voter list anymore? It was awful. Anyway, the morning editorial, same thing. So you have three things, right? Three things that really are telling. You're greatly curtailing voting hours. You're doing this absurd absurd purging.
Yeah, don't sign up these high school and college kids.
And you're penalizing nonprofit groups who sign up everybody. I swear, I think a lot of these high school kids, they vote Republican. They're more conservative than their parents are. I don't know what the Republicans are so nervous about. Oh, we can't let young people vote.
The teachers, what was going on at PHS? And remember that a teacher in Santa Rosa County didn't turn in the quick enough, and she was going to get fined $1,000.
Right.
Oh my God!
Because she didn't turn it in, and she couldn't do it until Monday morning.
Didn't turn it in quick enough.
Yeah. So anyway, it's no credit to the Republican Party.
No, it isn't. No,
it's shameful.
It's terrible.
It is shameful.
Well, of course, some of these efforts, you know, are, I mean, the MTV and Rock the Vote and what they do in high schools is, don't know anything, just vote. It's just important that you vote. Well, no. It's also important that you know what's going on a little bit. You know, an uninformed electorate. You know, well, we're going to have random voting, and I suspect that some of these high school kids, the teachers would, you're 18, okay, here's your, pass that out. We're going to turn it. Now you're registered to vote.
You get
They're not going anywhere near
an uninformed electorate. You know what happened?
Yeah.
Pervasive Republicans get elected. That's what we have here.
With an uninformed electorate,
that's it.
You get some unqualified guy who stands up and says, hope and change. I'm selling hope and change. Ooh, we've had enough of that.
Well, we had hope, but we didn't get no change.
Oh, we got change. We got some change.
We didn't get no change. Yeah. All right, now, I'm just going to give you some. We're going to talk about the Maritime Park in a few minutes. We're going to talk about the University of West Florida. Let's just talk about the University of West Florida right now. Now, we're going to catch some criticisms, but I want your speech about free speech, which you gave me on the phone, which I thought was great.
The first thing that we ought to do, you know, we're critical of everything, including each other and ourselves. We're just cynics and critical, and we believe in nothing but dissent. There should never be majority opinion. It's just dissent. But we are not only allowed by our First Amendment to say what we want, but we don't have a First Amendment right to airtime and studio time at the University of West Florida or any of this stuff we're getting now. And some of the people who are graciously allowing us to do this with their TV cameras and stuff are being criticized by us. And I
Yes.
think that's wonderful. I think it's a credit to them.
And they should love it.
Well, they don't love it. People don't love being
No,
criticized.
no. It's like people say, well, I have some constructive criticism. And I never
I
heard
don't
any
wanna hear that.
criticisms that constructive. It's always negative, and I don't like it. All right, now we're going to go to the golf course. Okay.
Yeah.
So here we have. Here we have a presentation of a great idea that no one's heard about. And the great idea is that the university is going to buy, for $2.1 million apparently, a golf course that's adjacent, more or less, not exactly adjacent because there's a little separation, but more or less adjacent to the northwest corner of the campus. Now, when you look at something like this, the average guy on the street, average woman on the street would say, well, you know, golf courses aren't doing so hot. You're paying $2.1 million for sort of a mediocre golf course, and you're going to run it by students who really can barely run a fraternity party, and they're going to all of a sudden be your new labor force, which is just in and of itself ludicrous.
Well, the idea is they're going to get trained.
Yeah,
to
well, they're
run
going to get trained.
businesses.
So you're going to be out there playing golf, and you're going to be dealing with somebody who's being trained, who can't even write up your ticket, and who's giving you the wrong cart anyway. So this is the plan at the university. So there's a thing. This is going to be a great business venture. Well, normally when you have a great business venture, somebody would publish the business plan. Here's our expected gross revenues. Here's what our debt
Here's
surface
how we can
is.
turn something that apparently isn't making a lot of money
Yeah, that's why it's being sold.
into something that will make money. I mean, golf courses, the Moors is a nice golf course, and nobody's playing golf out there.
Beautiful golf course. The cost of maintenance for golf courses is very high. But let's just say, in theory here, but the premise is that it was a good business decision. Here's what's happening in the University of West Florida, which you've got good people. We've said that many times here, but you have something developing here now about the free enterprise kind of entrepreneurial activity that the university wants to engage in. The way they've structured this, though, Bill, is this operating entity is really not subject to much public scrutiny.
I don't understand it. It's on the PNJ. It's about the creation of a separate entity that's going to do a lot of business. And I've read it pretty carefully. It's all pretty confusing, like exactly what they're going to do, who's going to get the money, and what are going to be the checks and balances on this thing.
Well,
I don't see that.
Little things like requests for proposals, highest and best use, public input. Now, there's an argument that can be made if a university is in a strategic negotiation for something critical.
You can't publish everything.
Yeah, you can't go out and say, oh, well, we're going to do such and have a handful of protesters show up with signs and kill the whole deal. So I understand that side of it, but I think when you create an entity that is going to have that as a standard operating procedure, the public is going to be very suspect, the press is going to be all over it, and it might be counterproductive in the end to create something that raises suspicion.
I don't know. I just don't know enough about it. But when we're dealing with public land in this public university, I don't know. I'm not skeptical and
I'm
wary
not sure.
of it.
I'm not sure the legal effect of having an operating entity that is not in the sunshine, for which there's no public notice, and you're dealing with my ass, something I own as a taxpayer.
We are going to have a hotel and convention center, apparently,
I don't know.
on the university property, right? Didn't they clear the land for that?
Well, that's what they're saying they're going to do. I don't know that they've cleared the land.
And I don't know. I guess part of the deal is that students, to get business experience, and I know from my college-age students that internships, my kid who's at the University of Florida has to have an internship to get his degree in sports management. He has to go somewhere and intern, and which makes sense. So having students be involved in business is a sensible part of the plan.
Well, it's one way. You don't spend $2 million to give some students an intern chance. I mean,
but there's also, why wouldn't you say, well, here's what we have to offer, and we want requests for proposals. What are you going to do? And part of that has to be whatever else we need you to do to deal with our interns. Free labor is usually not that hard to sell.
No, it's not. Well, it's pretty clear.
So why can't it just be a straightforward RFP? And what you'd want, of course, is one of the big, Hilton or Marriott's, if it's going to be successful, they have worldwide reservations and they can cross-sell.
Well, they're never going to build a Marriott out at Scenic Hills. I mean, you're talking about the convention center.
What about the entrance to to the university? Well, they might have a convention center, and
Well, I don't know
if
where
they have a
they're gonna
lot of students, then you have, parents wanting to come. I don't know.
Well, you don't need to build a $2.1 million golf course.
Well, the golf
that
course
gives
is
them-
a different thing.
I'm
There
saying-
may be something else going on there.
Well, there is something else going on. When we come back after this short break, we'll talk about what might be going on about the golf course, not to disparage anybody or decision makers, but it's just hard to imagine that this is a wonderful business venture, which was the viewpoint that was pushing this thing along. We'll be back in just a minute.
For over 30 years, we've had the privilege to live and work in this great community. Kerrigan, Estes, Rankin, McLeod, and Thompson, representing accident victims across Northwest Florida.
Okay, we're back within reason, Bill and Bob. Now, during the break, Mr. Rankin just announced a plan which is just startling,
help
startling
Rankin,
in its revelation
Stupidity.
of reflection and intellectual depth. Could you give us that?
Well, we talked a week or two ago. Mayor Bloomberg and everybody jumped on this. I really brought this up because Mayor Bloomberg said no soft drinks over 16 ounces, and people have 44-ounce big
Very
gulps.
reasonable. Go ahead.
And my comment about that was everybody just derided Mayor Bloomberg, and it was a terrible idea. Why don't you drink all the soft drinks you want, which is hard to disagree with. But I thought, we talked about the National Defense Authorization Act, where pick anybody you know. They can go to jail forever, no lawyers, no due process, no right. They just decide that you're a terrorist based on no standards and put you in jail. Well, people could stand that, but take away my big gulp, and they were up in arms. So that's why this came up.
Yeah.
But then I thought about this. It's going to be, first of all, what if poor people buy these big drinks and just share them? So they're not drinking the whole big drink.
Now, how many poor people do you know share their drinks?
All of them.
You see a lot of poor
All
people?
the poor people I know always share their
Yeah,
drinks. I don't know.
the two you met last
just
year.
an idea,
Go ahead.
you
Go
know?
ahead. That's right.
I mean, it
Now,
may
I
be-
know the poor people, and they don't share the drink. But go on with
They
this.
don't?
They don't go on with this analysis. It's all right.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Well, maybe you've just completed a marathon, and you need 44 ounces.
You
know,
could.
and you're so thin, you're like those Ethiopians. You
Yeah.
can see right through them.
Right.
They need. I mean, maybe there's some
Add some
justification
sugar,
for
and
it.
that's good
yeah,
for you.
that's
It's good for you.
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
And then
So what's the
you
problem?
gotta police it.
Yeah.
You know, you gotta send people around to investigate and stuff.
The big gulp police.
This will be easier.
Yeah.
Just don't sell any big clothes. You can't have pants bigger than, say, well, let the mayor decide, maybe 44.
So when
So you either have to wrap a towel around yourself or lose weight.
what
You think that'd be good?
I like that.
The
idea.
mayor wants people to
Yeah.
be thin.
So-
Everybody's wringing their hands. That we have a nation of obese people.
Yeah.
But there's not a damn thing you can do about it. If people want to eat
Yeah.
too much,
To excess. Yeah.
or if the Octomom wants to have 8 babies, or, you know.
You know how many calories are in a small thing of Haagen-Dazs? Do you know how many?
A lot. No, I don't know.
Over
but
1,000.
Really?
Yeah. In a little thing of Haagen-Dazs.
Where's the
like this.
mayor when we need him?
I don't know.
That's too much calories
But
for
you know,
people.
all the big and tall shops will have a big red mark through the tall part, right?
You're out.
No, big through the big part.
Oh, the big part.
Yeah,
You
through
can't
the
be
part.
big.
You can be tall,
That's your tall.
like you. So those
Or,
shops are still
here's another
available.
idea.
But
Now,
the big
this,
people, they don't have
This
a
is an
shop.
original idea.
All right.
There are scales that will show your body mass index.
Oh.
So if you got height and weight, you can do the calculation for body mass index.
Yeah.
When you go up to the 7-Eleven, your body mass index reads out. If it's low enough, you can buy anything you want. If it's high, no candy, no sugar, nothing. And the mayor comes
about
and
beer?
hauls you out.
What about beer?
Beer is sacrosanct. Oh my God! I hope this
Don't
would
mess with the
never-
beer.
This would never reflect because go to Ireland and you'll read the truth, which is Guinness is good for you.
Yeah,
and we please don't.
A lot of the
don't mess
places
with
now,
beer.
they'll say, do you want
Oh, do you want to supersize
super, no, well, they give you, the beer's like this. I mean, you have to drink it
that's
really
good.
fast. It gets
Yeah.
warm. So people just jugging.
My one visit to Germany, I just loved Germany because they didn't have diet anything. I mean, they had real butter. and the hotel had this cellar. All the stereotypes about Germany are true.
All true.
They drive real fast in taxis that are scrupulously clean.
Yeah.
I just love
Mercedes,
Germans.
most of them Mercedes.
They'll stay. Got in a Mercedes taxi that was
Right.
going 220 kilometers per hour, which is really fast, just zipping down into Munich.
Good
220 kilometers an hour, or was it 120?
It'd be 120.
No, I forgot. It
No,
was fast.
It'd be 100.
No,
That'd be
120
like,
wouldn't
be like
that
80.
fast.
Yeah, it'd be 80,
Yeah,
85.
it was going pretty fast.
Yeah, not too
Now,
much.
it was a long time ago. I forgot now.
What's on the Autobahn, right?
But it was on the Autobahn,
Yeah.
just going into town.
I almost got ran over on the Autobahn because I didn't realize how fast you're supposed to go. So I'm kind of puttering around about 55 miles an hour. I mean, I almost got killed.
Well, the
terrible.
insurance guy, Germany's just great. All the roads are great. You can drive as fast as you want, but you must have lane discipline. And the Germans would stand, and I experienced this because I had to walk from one hotel to the other. I have all these German stories. It was about like 2 days. And I was walking back from one hotel to the other hotel one night, and it was a light mist, and there was no traffic, and the Germans all stood and waited for the light. It was wonderful. They're very disciplined. You know, that's why they almost won the Second World War.
Well, that's why they participated in the Second World War. How about that?
Well, there are a lot of reasons for that. The
okay.
Treaty at Versailles is another. Now I kind of lost the thread of this whole discussion.
Well, you were talking about the Germans, but I want to talk about the Koch brothers.
Yeah. Oh, we're talking about the Autobahn and the roads are really terrific. And
But you said they have lane discipline.
But you cannot just drift back and forth while you're drinking your big gulp and texting and stuff like we do here.
Right.
You know,
Right.
the Germans, when Germans a few years ago they finally caught on. They started making cars in America, but the Germans couldn't understand why you'd want to have cup holders in your car. You know, it was for driving.
Right.
I just like that sensibility. And the insurance guy who was on this case, he came all the way down some long distance from Hamburg or something. It was like northern Germany, and he came down in his car at 150 miles an hour. It was. I just loved Germany.
Good gosh.
Yeah, you go 150 miles an hour on the Autobahn.
I've been. As I say, I almost got killed.
Don't
I got
blink.
on there by mistake. I didn't know where I was going. I was like on the wrong road. All right, let me ask you about the Koch brothers. Now, Bill's a big advocate of the Koch brothers dumping all their money on whoever they want to. But let me just read you how bad this is, okay? Here, we're talking about in Florida and the Koch brothers, and they spent $10 million in this Governor Scott Walker's campaign. $10 million themselves from their front group, Americans for Prosperity. I love these names. $1 million through the Republican Governors Association, and more from members of the multi-million-dollar donor club of financial titans that meet regularly at Koch-hosted secret summits. Meanwhile, the official campaign of the Democratic opponent, Tom Barrett, raised about $4 million.
I love that, secret summits.
Yeah, it is.
I mean, unless the doors open to everybody, it's a secret.
Is
So
it-
every party you ever have,
Is it
your
any
family's
wa-
invited, there's a secret
Is it any
party.
wonder that Walker climbed steadily in the polls and ultimately won? Okay.
Well, maybe the reason Walker won was he saved him $1 billion and taxes were going down and his whole plan was
Now,
working.
the reason he won was because people don't want to kick a sitting governor out unless they commit a crime or
Yeah, I hope
malfeasance.
so.
Okay, I mean, that was...
Well, there was also
exit poll
some
said that.
merit to what he did. You know, this
Well,
whole business with collective, but the unions, public sector unions pick their own bosses. Public sector unions have
They took
caused
a hit.
an enormous crisis in this country, and we've got it right here in Pensacola.
We
a
do.
crisis, an existential crisis, and we're gonna keep talking about it because the city of Pensacola is in danger of going under and being totally screwed. I mean, we're just one little actuarial adjustment away from being totally screwed. We already take all the ad valorem taxes and dump them into the pension
And that
plans.
doesn't cover it, by
That
the way.
doesn't cover it.
No.
No. And that's not the salaries and health benefits.
No.
That's just for the pensions.
Right.
It's just
Well,
crazy.
here's the problem. Let me just talk for a second about what we've talked about this in this program before. But the unfunded liability means the liability hadn't been funded yet. They don't have any money for it yet. But this is what we think we're going to have to pay out over the future, like $116 million, assuming, and this is kind of nuanced and technical, the actuarial assumption based on the return is 8%. Now, there's a lot more in it as well. If you just invest in the market, you'll do 4%, 3%. There's other factors, death, people making claims, people coming in, people going out. It's very complicated. But virtually across the nation, starting in New York, going every place, they're saying that this actuarial assumption of 8% is way too high. It's 7 on a good day and more likely around 6.
Right. And if you haven't
Yeah.
thought about this, if anytime you have a pension plan, any rational pension plan, as people, and the pension plans where employees kick in, you have a place for the money. Now, where the Pensacola Police Department is concerned, they don't really kick in much, but you have the money, and you have the money from the employers, and you kind of guess as to what your liability is for this person at this time. And then it's pretty complicated mathematics, but they can figure it out and figure out what you're supposed to be putting into the pension plan.
And the pressure on that number, that actuarial number,
Right.
comes from the people who are receiving the benefits. They want that number very high so they can keep all of their benefits.
Assume
it's
that
gonna be great. Yeah.
So you invest the money. Now, one of the problems, we can't just blame it all on the unions. We had all this money invested, and when the stock market took a dive,
Right.
we had half that money invested. That doesn't mean you're bad at investing. The whole equity market took a huge dive, and that affected the unfunded liabilities, but there's more to it.
Well, here's an article from the Fed. Americans' wealth has dropped 40%.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're talking about a national decline in wealth. But the position of the unions has been, I'm a big union supporter, but the public sector unions have breached the trust of unions. They have so pressured for their own benefits and ignored the reality of the rest of the community to our great detriment. They have hurt the union movement more than any single act in the last decade. The overreach by the public sector unions. So what's going on now? They're not willing to budge on, in the police union and primarily, not willing to budge on anything. They want to protect, listen to this, they want to make sure that new hires that they haven't even met yet, okay, are going to be in their union.
Now that protects the union.
And
all
be
the people
in
who are
that pension
employed
fund.
now,
Right.
you know, their interest is pretty much themselves. And and you got this argument. Well, it's a promise. Well, it's a deal. Well, I gave up some wages, and I'm in a dangerous job, and what I'm getting for it is a pretty modest salary, but I get nice retirement benefits, and that's the deal. And don't change the deal when I'm in it.
Yeah.
All right, we'll leave your deal alone. But a new person knows that he's getting a 401k, getting a defined contribution plan.
Right.
Now, I don't think the employees are going to care much about that.
The current employees
it's the unions.
have a conflict of interest with the unions because the unions want people who haven't even shown up yet to be protected, to be able to be in their retirement system to our great detriment.
Otherwise, the union goes away.
Otherwise, the union starts fading. So this conflict of public sector unions came to head in Wisconsin, and they lost it. They took this governor on. They got kicked good. So what's happening locally? Here's the point. If this actuarial rate is reduced, and we talked about this in the past, we won't beat it to death, but if this actuarial rate is reduced from 8% to 7%, it is a huge impact, a huge impact. Over 200 million, right?
Yeah.
And there's the number.
Yeah. Well, no, that's if it's reduced pretty more. These numbers are just. It's all hard.
What do you know the
it's
number?
all very complicated.
Do you know the 7% number and the 6% number?
Yeah, we heard the 7, but it doubled with a pretty low number. The unfunded liability now for all the pension plans is something like $116 million.
That's correct.
It's gone up.
Yeah.
And if you lower it a couple of percentage points, it could double. I don't know if that's a 7% number because it's hard to keep track of all these numbers. But the situation is this: we've already cut down on the number of employees in the city. There are already things the city can't do. Understand, this is easy to understand. This is what got me interested in it. All the ad valorem taxes collected by the city, $12 million, all of that money goes just to the pension plans. If you didn't have to fund these pensions, you wouldn't have to have any ad valorem taxes. Wouldn't that make the city attractive?
Well, that plus is that's not sufficient money.
It's worse than that.
Yeah.
There are cities in this country, and it already happened to a little extent here, where all the city services, all the good things about the city, people love the Thursday nights in the park. That's being cut. Now, that may be a different reason. But all the things that people like that they get from their cities, maintenance of parks and fireworks displays or whatever the city does, that's all going to have to go. The city is going to be doing nothing but being in the business of snatching tax money to give to people who've already retired. It's worse than that because people coming into the city And I saw this in one of these magazines that rates retirement places. They're looking at, you know, what's the climate like? What's the taxes like? What are the schools like? And they also look at unfunded liabilities, because that's going to predict what the city's going to be able to do for you.
Predict your tax increments
So,
in the future. Yeah.
Yeah, so we have to get a grip on this, and the unions are in the position, we're not budging. We got collective bargaining, and we're not budging. This has been brought to us by a number of factors. One is there's the natural goodwill that's enjoyed by especially the people who come on your demand and put out your fires and deal with your burglars, and you naturally owe them a lot of goodwill and say, boy, these people are putting their lives on the line and they're going to protect me, and we want to treat them right. And then venial politicians who really don't care about 20 years from now. Give me the votes now. And the electorate that thinks that if the FOP is behind a candidate, they must be upstanding Americans and all for safe streets. No. These union groups, if you see the FOP or the teachers union supports a candidate and you vote for that candidate, what that means is your taxes are going up.
But don't couple these unions up, though.
Yeah, they're all, the teachers unions, all the public sector unions, the police unions, every one of them. If they endorse somebody, I think that would be a good reason not to vote for that person, because they're in the pocket of the union and they're going to give away too much of their money.
But it's a different issue on the financial liability question, because the teachers union has nothing to do with the financial liability of the city of Pensacola, and that's
that's right.
That's what we were talking about.
That's right. If we're talking about the city of Pensacola, don't worry about the teachers.
But I mean,
I was just going to give a general guide for voting.
Yeah, I know. I saw that.
If public sector unions are behind a candidate, vote for the other candidate.
Well,
that's what I do, and that, of course, is what you want to do.
We have to take a break. I have to get reassembled here. What time to take a break, is it not? Okay, we're going to take a short break, and we'll be right back.
For over 30 years, we've had the privilege to live and work in this great community. Kerrigan, Estes, Rankin, McLeod, and Thompson, representing accident victims across Northwest Florida.
Welcome back to Within Reason with Bob Kerrigan and Bill Rankin, and I deflected, but Bob was talking about a couple of important issues, and I kind of led us into the cul-de-sac of bombast and hot air and invective, which was probably a bad idea. I really believe these things.
I agree with a lot of what you were saying. I agree.
But you were talking about one of the important issues is the golf course.
Well, I think it's an important issue from this perspective. Once the public loses confidence, it's hard to get it back. And here you have a great university, I think the best president of any university in Florida, bar none, okay, who enjoys probably an 80% approval rating, maybe higher.
Except among the faculty.
Well, you know, the faculty always whine and complain about something, and that's just the faculty. But among the people, and just great vision, I'm just a big fan of Dr. Benz. But I think when you allow the movers and shakers to start moving and shaking with public assets, it's going to spill over on her and it's going to hurt her. So I hope that she will say we have to have more transparency than what some people are suggesting. And to lay this golf course decision off on her like it was her idea, I don't think that's accurate, and I think that viewpoint was wrong. I don't think it was her idea.
Is the foundation, in fact, coming up with the money? Is it the foundation?
They're going to finance some of it, and the foundation's coming up with some of it. But that's not the issue. To me, the issue is this. If you present this as a viable business decision, then you have to support it as a viable business decision. Now, you're going to say, well, no. What we're doing is we're going to meet Title IX requirements because we're going to have a women's golf team. I mean, but let's have some explanation of what's really behind us. And once you do this, then we need to know, okay, are there going to be some other collateral benefits? For example, opening up the northwest corridor on 10 Mile Road, is that what's involved here? If it is, then let's have a discussion about that, because then the entrepreneurs and others are going to be snatching up the land and building apartment complexes and all that. And this could end up hurting the president of this university. So I just hope she'll demand, I need to know, speaking for her, what's going on, why is this going on, what's involved, who's going to benefit, who's getting the money. Because when you have public assets, the fiduciary responsibility is at the highest possible level, because it's not theirs, it's ours. Okay? So I hope that she'll just demand a lot more explanation before she thinks this is probably a good idea. Maybe it is. I don't know. Might be a great idea, but it needs more public discussion and a little less surprise, in my opinion.
Would it be anything? Now, we don't have a right to look at the books of the Scenic Hills Country Club, but would it be okay for the public to know, well, what are we projecting in terms of, here's our debt service, we're going to borrow money from the bank, we've got to pay it back with interest, here's what it's going to cost to water the golf course, and here's what it's going to cost for all these things you need to do maintain a golf course, and here's how much money's coming in.
Absolutely.
Now, maybe you don't have to make a profit, or maybe you don't even have to break even if you're doing something good for students. You know, they're probably not making money on the gym here or the ball fields.
Of course not.
Because they provide a service to the students.
Of course.
It would be nice to know how much that service is going to cost.
Well, you need to define the mission. What is our mission? Okay. Then, how are we going to facilitate buying it? And you're right, it would be a due diligence review of the business plan, the projected revenues and expenses, and be some analysis. And if you publish something like that, there's a lot of smart golf course people around, Bill, and they'd read it and say, I'll tell you one thing you've missed here is how are you going to access enough water? Because you're going to have to invade this water table more than you're invading it now. You're going to have approval from the Northwest Florida Water Management people. You've got a spill off going into certain areas, which you're going to have to use more fertilizer because they've got grass out there that isn't growing. I don't know, because I'm not a golf course person, but if you publish this kind of thing and invite public input, you make better decisions. So operating all of this in secrecy. Now, once they get the deal made, okay, so let's say they have a contract to buy it for X dollars, or 60 or 90 days in which to decide, an option to buy it. Then there's no reason not to disclose everything to the public. And yes, you'd have access to those books. You'd absolutely have access to the books, which I think you want to look at them for this reason. They operate a number of golf courses. So you want to look at how overhead is allocated. So if they're saying, we're deriving a certain profit, and say, well, maybe you are, maybe you aren't. Because generally golf courses are hurting right now, and the idea that this thing is going to make a lot of money, it just seems ludicrous to me, but it might be profitable. Hell, I haven't seen it yet.
Maybe there's something about it that's going to make this golf course make money. Or even if it doesn't. Let's say, well, it's going to cost us this much a year, but we're going to let the students play golf cheap, and we're going to let some students...
Might be a good reason to do it.
That might be okay, but what's the number? How much is it going to cost?
Right.
Are we going to spend $1 million a year? An amount equivalent where you can put all the student golfers in limousines and take them over to the moors or something, and, you know.
Well, for $2 million, you might be able to build the finest women's athletic facility in the state, a multi-use facility of some kind for.
Well, for $2 million, it'd have to be a small one.
Well, okay, well, for whatever. Yeah. Okay, yeah, but I'm saying you have some options there. Why is a golf course? Why is that particular golf course come online? I don't know.
Jason. But, and maybe it's a fine idea. I think what we're complaining about is not just the golf course, but we're hoping there's some transparency, so we'll see how much it costs and whether or not it makes sense. And maybe it makes great sense, and then maybe some other benefits flow to the university.
But this very discussion needs to take place in a public forum. And they should open this up to people. I think there's a lot of smart people around. We've found this in different things we've done. Oh my goodness, the
people
public,
ask good questions.
They ask good questions. They're informed. They say, hey, did you know this about this golf course? That they've had this problem and this problem and this problem. Did anybody tell you that? It's been 5 years, but they haven't made the corrections. You might find out all kinds of stuff that you would not know because you're just looking at it, think strategically it'll open us up to the west, and so it's a good idea.
You've got a golf course. With all these houses around, I wonder what their liability insurance costs.
I have no idea. Well,
but it could be
generally a golfer is responsible for his own ball. Okay? In other words, the golf course itself doesn't assume any liability for the golfer. The golfer, well, maybe they have joint liability. I don't know.
I don't know.
But generally, golf
I mean,
courses.
if you design it wrong and the guest is in the patio of one of these homes and the golf course knows that balls are always raining down on this patio, and they could change it by moving something around, and they don't do it, and the golf ball kills somebody. I don't know.
I'm going to give you a
it's just
hint
an example.
about buying a.
I don't know about golf.
I'll give you a hint about buying a lot on a golf course. You want this hint?
Sure.
This is for our viewers too. Never buy a lot from the tee box. You're on the tee box. Never buy a lot that is on the right side of the tee box down about 125 to 175 yards. Okay? Never. You know why?
Well, that's where the duffers send
all the hackers take a big slice and the ball goes in the yard and knocks people on the head. Those are the worst lots you can get. So what you get, people retiring from wherever, and they don't know anything about golf courses, and they're sitting out in the backyard, but boom, boom. I went and looked at a house one time, and I said, listen, this thing's not situated. This was out in Colorado. So this thing's not situated right. I'm worried about, this thing, people slicing these balls in this yard. And he goes, that never happens. He said, we've never had an instance of that. I thought, it seems very odd to me based on what I was looking at. Well, maybe they hit the ball further out here. So we went out the front door to talk, and there were 2 golf balls in the front yard. I said, did the dog bring these in here, or what happened with that? They're sitting right there in the front yard. So anyway, don't buy a lot on the right-hand side. Back to your point, once you buy a house, and you put yourself in harm's way. I don't know. To me, the liability theory wouldn't be really good. Well, I bought a house here, and I didn't expect the ball to hit me on the head, although I knew it would land in my yard. I don't know. We wouldn't take it. You'd take a case like that. I wouldn't take a case like that.
I don't know enough about it. I don't know enough about it to know.
Yeah, well, I don't think there's much liability. But a golfer is responsible for the ball he hits, okay? He's clearly responsible for it. And now you hit a ball and hit somebody in the head, you're legally liable for it. Okay, doesn't matter
how the golf course.
Doesn't matter how the golf course was designed. You're supposed to hit the ball in the fairway, not in somebody's yard.
What if there's a hidden house behind a tree or something?
Okay, well, I'm not going there. I don't have any idea. All right, do you want me to say about Connie Mack before we get to Connie Mack? Because I know you're a big fan of Connie.
I am not a big fan of Connie Mack. Bob's this is the dirt hour. You got a lot of dirt on Connie Mack.
I do have a lot of dirt. Yeah, I am loaded up on Connie Mack. And here's our boy babyface Jeb Bush, who says he thinks Connie Mack would be a great senator. Okay, he does. Connie Mack has a long history of brawls and fighting and really bad conduct. But probably the most interesting one that he got into was he got in a fight with a guy that was kicking his you-know-what. And so he gets this guy, grabs onto him, and...
This is in a bar, wasn't it?
This was a baseball player, but I don't think it was in the bar.
It wasn't in a bar?
It might have been in a bar because he spent most of his time in a bar. But anyway, he gets in this fight, and he's losing the fight, so he grabs the baseball player by the crotch as hard as he can, which was very uncomfortable for the baseball player. So in the meantime, the baseball player apparently threw him like an old shot put and then cracked his ankle. So what does the guy do who believes in personal responsibility, personal accountability, and can't stand frivolous lawsuits?
Tort reform, yeah.
And tort reform. What do you think he did?
He sued.
He sued. Of course he did. And so they go to trial, and here's Connie saying, oh, I had him like this, and I had me back like that, and I was pulling on him like this, and then he pushed me, he threw me down and cracked my ankle. Okay? And the jury said, oh my goodness, well, he's clearly responsible for your ankle. And then they had to determine how much money they were going to give Connie Mack. And how much do you think they gave him?
$1.
That's too high.
They didn't give him $1?
No, nothing.
A penny?
They didn't give him anything. Zero. They gave him zero because basically Connie Mack started the whole thing. He just cracked his ankle. Now, here's the guy, by the way, he's been in, he's had road rage, I guess they call it road rash. Road rage, he got in a fight with a guy on a car. Connie's been in more fights and brawls and drunks. And, oh, by the way, he had a little condo down in Fort Myers that apparently wasn't any bigger than a closet. That was his home so he could stay in the district, and he owned a $650,000 house in Virginia. That's where he lived full time. But once a month, apparently, he would come down to his home.
Oh, that's typical of politicians.
Is it? Yeah. Okay. Well, Republicans. Yeah. So anyway, he would come down there and he would stay in this little house every once in a while. And he got into a big tussle down there because he didn't pay his homeowner's dues. And he's been sued several times. Now, here's Jeb Bush, who said I've studied this, and I've carefully looked at the qualifications of all of our Republican candidates. Now, get ready for this. And Jeb has concluded, of all of these people running, Connie Mack's the best one they got.
And he's going to run against Nelson.
He's running against Nelson. He's the best one they have. Connie Mack, would you have anything to say about that? I mean, I'd like to have your
No.
side. Oh, okay. I mean,
No,
Nelson,
I wouldn't vote.
Yeah.
Well, here's the problem.
Yeah.
When you vote for a person, you know, they may be admirable, but you're really voting for the party. Because to get anywhere, they have to play ball with the party. If you want a committee chairmanship,
Yeah.
you have to play ball with the party. You have to vote where the party leadership tells you to
If I
vote.
were you, I wouldn't use that play ball thing with Connie
No.
Mack. That doesn't work.
No.
You see, play ball kind of ignites this memory of
but-
going
but
after the ball player.
If
Are you
you're
with me on
thinking that
Okay, go
perhaps,
ahead.
yeah, I got that.
You got it? Okay, go ahead.
If you're thinking that perhaps there's a good Democratic congressman you'd want to vote for, don't do it. Understand this. If, now that we talked about, this is a big if, I don't think it'll happen, but if the Democrats take control of the House, and if the Honorable Maxine Waters gets through her latest ethics problem, she will be the head of the House Financial Services Committee. Now, I've got a quote from Maxine Waters, but it goes something like this. She's talking to a bunch of oil company executives, and she's not liking what they're saying because they are talking about free enterprise and the stuff she doesn't like. And she said, well, this liberal, I'll tell you what this liberal is about. We'd be for nationalizing your companies. What do you think about that? And what I think about this, I didn't know Cesar Chavez was in our House of Representatives. I mean, she is just an outrageous fraud.
You always pick on our weak link, and then you
Well, you
just
got a lot of
pounce
weak
on
links.
it like a fox on a
But
mouse.
You see,
Boom.
that's the problem. That's the problem.
You want to mention
with
Nancy
this.
Pelosi while you're on this? I mean, well, can't you
Well,
talk about...
she's the head Democrat in the House.
You're going to miss
She's
Barney
the
Frank.
worst.
You're going to miss Barney
I'm
Frank.
gonna miss Barney Frank in a way.
Yeah.
He's one of the most amusing and intelligent.
Ooh, he was a smart guy.
He was
you
a,
can't
he
take
was a
that from him.
smart guy.
Smart guy.
He was a menace. Really, Barney.
He just did some favors for some friends, but you know that's pretty much. I was in a
That's
debate
what
with a guy talking about this, what George W. Bush did with the prescription benefit. This guy's a very conservative guy and a very smart guy, and we were in this verbal jousting about it, and was on a radio station, and he had made some good points. And I said he's a very articulate and smart guy, but when I pointed out, well, your guy made a fix-in for the drug companies and gave them zillions of dollars.
Absolutely.
He said, well, they got a big lobby. It's like, well, wait, but that's not enough. That's not
okay.
enough.
Well, that explains it. Actually, that does explain it.
It does
But that's
explain it.
just- yeah,
But he came.
yeah.
Now, we aren't going to come back. And you have anything more about Maxine, or you finished blasting her?
That's about all. Well, you want to know about Maxine's current ethics problem?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Well,
We're
when they
gonna
were
skip-
giving
we're gonna
out money.
skip our last break. We're not taking our last break.
When they were giving out money to the banks,
Yeah.
Maxine lobbied really hard for this small bank because it was an African-American bank.
Yeah.
And I don't think she was really upfront with the fact that her husband had a big stake in the bank, got a bunch of taxpayer money, and then I think they went bust anyway.
Yeah, well.
And that gave rise to an ethics complaint. So what Maxine did with that was to sue the committee.
Uh-huh.
Maxine's just, well, you know, she's a wacko liberal from California.
You don't believe in litigation, but that's what you do, I think. I mean, isn't that what you make a living?
I don't believe in all litigation. You know, if you were a surgeon, you wouldn't believe in just taking somebody's nose off for the fun of it. You'd have to be good
No, you
surgery.
wouldn't. All right, do you want to talk about the Maritime Park
Yeah.
or not?
No, that's a local issue that's really good.
Yeah.
Well, but we also want to get to the farm bill.
Yeah, let's do. If we could post this slide that we have anytime that you guys can find it.
Okay.
This slide.
And we can do the farm bill in an overview in about 2 minutes,
Yeah, you
and leave
can-
the rest of the show for the Maritime Park.
That'd be
Wanna do
fine.
that?
If you can find that slide back there, guys. If you can't, that's okay.
Well, we've got the name
It's
of the website.
www.farm.ewg.org.
Right.
Okay.
That's the
That
website.
is the website that will give you all of the people that are receiving farm welfare payments.
This is a great. Or they are debating in Congress now. Here we are going in debt to the tune of about $4 billion a day, and they're debating the latest giveaway. They talk about the family farms. Well, what about the family grocery store? I don't know. Don't they need help? Anyway, they just pass out this money for really no reason. I mean, the free enterprise system could take care of this. There is really In the Depression, maybe you wanted to support the family farms because they'd all starve to death or go broke. That's just not true now. And the money goes generally to the biggest players. And it is a total giveaway to vested interests. There's absolutely no reason for it. It keeps prices high. Some land that's on a substandard gets used. It keeps the price of this farmland high. It's just bad on all accounts unless you're a recipient. If you want to know, county by county,
Yep.
and year by year, who's getting the money? It's very interesting.
www.farm.ewg.org.
That's it. And you can look at Santa Rosa County and see who all's getting the money. Then if you know who's related to who, you can
Escambia
figure
County,
out.
too.
Escambia County, any county you
Okaloosa
want.
County.
Year by year, congressional districts, and some of these folks are getting a lot of money.
Some of them are elected officials.
They are.
So that's
Well,
kind of
they shouldn't
hard
be barred
for
from-
elected officials.
You know, from being the recipient
I
of these acts
understand
that
it.
protect the family farm. Even if they're free enterprise, small government people,
Yeah.
that doesn't mean they shouldn't take a few extra $1 million from the taxpayer because they are farmers.
All right, you want to talk about the maritime?
Okay, that now we've beat up the farm
Well, I'm
subsidies.
glad we did that on the farm.
The
And I had a
farm
whole lot of
subsidies
other
are
stuff.
outrageous. We're in all this debt, and they're just passing out money.
I wanted to read you this little about I've always give you a hard time about Governor Christie being a little tubby, but listen to
he's
this.
great.
Listen to this. He took some people on in New Jersey when members of New Jersey's Senate Judiciary Committee asked Mohammed, this candidate, appropriately tough question about his enthusiasm for Islam's archaic law code, the Sharia. Christie ridiculed the lawmakers. Sharia law has nothing to do with this appointment at all. It's crazy. It's crazy. So this Sharia, a law business is crap. It's just crazy. And I'm tired of dealing with the crazies. I mean, it's just unnecessary to be accusing this guy of things just because of his religious background. For this outburst, unsurprisingly, the Council on American Islamic Relations thanked and applauded Christie. Well, this is quite interesting to me, because he doesn't suck up to anybody. That was a very controversial thing he said, and he said it in defense of a guy who was being unfairly.
He takes on the unions.
He's a tough
He's done
customer.
a great job in New Jersey. New Jersey, I mean, corruption isn't tolerated in New Jersey. It's pretty much celebrated. I had an uncle who
that's a great quote.
wanted to be an alderman. I said, Uncle Neil, why are you running for office? He said, for the graft. He made no bones about it. Fortunately, he didn't win. He'd been in jail, probably. Wasn't that smart.
But no, he's just saying, honestly, you and I discussed this before, that we have pervasive corruption right here in this county. It's obvious that they're insider sweetheart deals, and everybody wants to serve on this thing to get this access to this thing, just like we've been talking about. But it's just more discreetly handled than it is in South America, where you just go right and check.
Well, it's a different kind of corruption.
It's a different kind of corruption, but it's human nature. It's just corrupt. I mean, it's just all kinds of corruption. All right, so the Maritime Park.
Yeah.
Well, here's what we have so far about the Maritime Park, just so people can understand. All right, what is the Maritime Park? The Community Maritime Park Association runs the complex where the baseball park is now located, in the amphitheater, okay? It's an independent entity in and of itself, okay, that's run by a board. And this board derives revenues from leasing the property to various entities for revenues to use the property. And one of the primary leases is to an LLC, that is a limited liability company, that is leasing it to have a ballpark, have a ball club there that they now have. Now, when the year is over, they'll either derive a profit from the leasing activities, or they'll have a loss. I predict they're going to have a loss, and I predict it's going to be several $100,000 based on what I now know about the deals that were made long before this current board was involved. I think some fairly poor deals, okay, from the taxpayer's perspective. The deal's a deal, so you have to honor the deal. But they're going to lose money, so the city's going to have to absorb that loss.
Well, a little loss is okay because you're attracting business downtown, right? And
the theory was, right.
Good for the
theory was that when we build this thing down here, it will bring a lot of development, and that will increase the tax rolls, et cetera. The question of whether that's going to happen, even if you had $300 million in new construction, it would only produce about $1.3 million in revenue. So the problem structurally, or finance-wise, is that these bonds were issued by the Community Redevelopment Agency, CRA, which is an area, geographical area, that keeps all the revenues from the ad valorem taxes down here. Well, they've pledged virtually all their money to pay the bonds, okay? Starting next year, they've got to come up with another $1 million.
Now, what did the bond money do?
The bond money built the stadium. Okay, that's how that worked. Okay, but they pledged their revenues from property receipts as collateral for the bonds
To build the stadium.
To build a stadium.
And then they lease the so the CMP owns the stadium, which they can lease out.
The CMP doesn't own the stadium. They operate the stadium.
They
Okay,
don't own it.
the stadium is not owned by the CMPA. They're the operating entity, but the bonds are guaranteed by the CRA. Well, the problem is that the CRA is using most, if not all, their money to pay these bond payments. Plus, next year they've got to start paying $1.3 million to move the sewer plant. Okay, so here's the issue. The city is faced with this shortfall, not only from the operation of the CMPA, which I predict is going to happen, but they may have shortfalls from the CRA coming up. They've got these shortfalls that they're looking right at. You can't borrow any more money because the CRA has pledged all the money that they can borrow for the building down there. You've got a very, very inexpensive, a very cheap lease to the person, the entity, the LLC that's leasing the property. It's a very favorable lease to the lessee. Again, what we've said, rightfully so, might bring a lot of activity downtown. We hope so. But it's a very, very favorable lease, which means it's not going to produce much revenue in the big picture of things. Now, the city is now facing, as Bill and I have discussed, these huge pension problems. So you've got this major development that is going to create a fiscal shortfall. No question how much, we don't know, but it's going to create a fiscal shortfall. And you're facing these unfunded liabilities that are going to increase. So the combination, and a overall decreasing property value. So when you look at the big picture, Bill,
it's a problem.
It's a problem that goes right back to these unions. The mayor has to draw the line and tell them, hell no, we're not going to go. You're not going to keep taking. You can't. We can't afford it. We just can't afford it. And to his credit, he's trying to do what he can do, but the unions are powerful, you know.
Yeah, they are. When we looked at this on the mayor's pension committee, every way the thing could be gamed, and the police department, I love the police department, but they're the best example of costing the city enormous amount of money. You talk about, well, how do you figure the pension? Well, you figure the pension, I think it's the best 3 out of the last 5 years, and if you can spike the pensions with unlimited overtime, then you're giving away more money.
Spike the annual earnings.
You spike the earnings with overtime.
I don't think they do it now, though, do they?
They're talking about changing it.
Oh, okay. I thought they had changed it. No, and that was it. Just jacked up the final year earnings. But again, we're back to the cops. Bill and I, we love them. You know, a deal's a deal. We need to protect them, but we have to draw the line. And the police department employees now have a direct conflict of interest, I think, with their union, and they're going to have to sort this out. Okay.
And the truth is, we just can't afford them anymore.
Can't afford it.
I mean, the sweetheart deals that were given out by venial politicians are just absolutely crazy. Would never happen in the private sector. For example, well, we're running out of time for examples. Join us again, and we'll have more to say about this.
Yeah, about the remarriage. That's one of the best.
That's
all right, we have that for next week. Thank you very much for watching Within Reason, Bob and Bill. Email us, send us a note, and if you have a contrary opinion about what we've said, particularly about the Maritime Park or the golf course or whatever, we will air it in its entirety.
Or more information that we don't have.
Or more information. You send it on to us, and we'll see you next week.
Good night.
Thank you.
For over 30 years, we've had the privilege to live and work in this great community. Kerrigan, Estes, Rankin, McLeod, and Thompson, representing accident victims across Northwest Florida.